Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again. I'm going to continue now with our ongoing series of classic anime reviews from the 80s and 90s, and we are now going to talk about what I think is one of the most quintessential, most classic titles amongst anime, whether it's 80s, 90s or even amongst today's anime, and that is Cyber City Oedo. For me, one of the best, most compelling and most visually brilliant animes out there. And this was really from the cyberpunk era, if you like, where we're dealing with a dystopian future. You know, you have that kind of Blade Runner, kind of Dune, Mad Max kind of style of aesthetic on here, and you're dealing with very much of humans living in futuristic cities with cyborgs and androids, etc. And very much you're dealing with criminal underground elements and people who are unsure of who they are and the reality that they live in. And this was kind of the animes that are around at that time, when you kind of had like the things like the Guyver and Genocyber, when you had animes that are really in depth and detailed with the aesthetic and the way they were drawn in terms of their vehicles and their designs with the cybernetics and the robot designs on here. And Cyber City 808 is one of the finest examples ever. So it was released in about 1990, and the director is by Yoshiaki Karaji, and it's more famous because it's from the production company of Madhouse, and they were responsible for some of the finest animes out there. We're talking about Wicked City, Ninja Scroll, Monster City, and Vampire Hunter Bloodlust is amongst their famous titles on it. Perfect Blue as well, which is, you know, I'll review in another video, but that's a very much departure, if you like, from normal anime subject matter. So that's the kind of quality we're dealing with here, where you have really kind of high standard animation and production values on it, and Cyber City 808 is really at the top of the range on here. So the setup is basically we're in a distant future here, and basically we concentrate on the futuristic city of Oedo, and there's a growing lawlessness in there. Crime is, you know, becoming more and more rife and apparent within the city, and the police forces are struggling hard to cope with this crime. So what they do, they venture out to former cyber criminals who are now imprisoned in this kind of really elevated space station on here, because they want to do the high risk jobs that nobody wants. There's a famous quotes behind it here, and we see Hatsugawa, who's like the police chief, and he enlists the services of three main cyber criminals. We have Sengoku, we have Benten, and we have Gogul, and three of them together, they're basically let out back into existence to be able to combat this crime. Now the condition is, of course, that every time they solve these crimes, they get a bit knocked off their sentence. They're serving like 300-year sentences due to their crimes. Okay. Now the way to keep these criminals in check, of course, is by they each wear a metal collar that has an explosive device. So anytime they go rogue or out of control, they can basically have their heads detonated. And Hatsugawa, as the police chief, has the control over these criminals. Okay, so we see them venture out on all these adventures. They take on these various antagonists and villains throughout on here. Now the structure of this story here is that it's not necessarily a movie, but it's kind of a mini series. You have 3 episode arcs, and each of them are about 45 to 55 minutes long. You have one which is called Virtual Death, you have 2 which is called Soul Trooper, and you have 3 which is called Bloodlust. And each of these story arcs, they have each of the main characters as the main lead, but all of them, they have all 3 characters kind of intertwined. They're all involved with one another, and they're all prominent in all 3 of these separate story arcs. And that's what makes Cyber City 808 so great about this. So what's so special about this? Now the first thing I've got to tell you is, now you get these animes and mangas, and throughout you'll see there are various dubs. You know, some you'll get the original Japanese soundtrack, and then some will obviously have an English dub, particularly if we're talking about when the kind of anime revolution began in the early 90s. You would get the sort of UK dub versions here. Now as these animes progressed later on throughout the years, they would get kind of remastered and upgraded, and as well as the visual upgrade, you would also have an audio upgrade, and some of them would have like a more of an Americanized dub version on here. Now when it comes to Cyber City 808, I recommend highly to you that you get the UK version with the soundtrack by Rory McFarlane. If you go on YouTube, you should be able to find this UK version on it. Just type in Cyber City Away or Rory McFarlane on the search engine and you'll be able to find it. This is one of the best soundtracks ever of any anime, any animation production ever. You know, it's just this great fusion of rock and techno and disco and pop and synthesized sounds on here. And Roy McFarlane is just it's a great composer in terms of this animation on it. I don't know if he's done too many other cinematic projects or animation projects. I've looked online and tried to find any other animes he's been involved with. I don't think he has done, but anybody remind me in the comics. But the soundtrack here, it's just, honestly, it's just so vivid, and it composes so well and integrates so well with the action and the tone of the story itself, and it's got one of the best intros ever you've got to any kind of anime. Just when you hear it, you know, we have the beginning when I said before Hasegawa recruits the three criminals, and then it goes straight into the intro. You see the kind of collar joining together, and then you see the kind of cyber logo pop up on the screen, and then the music, the rock music kicks in, and trust me, you'll love this intro. You'll see it if you've got the biggest audio or sound cinema kit you can find, or the biggest sound bar. Just ramp this up, and you can, again, like I said, with all these animes, you'll find a remastered HD version. The soundtrack is awesome throughout, and I'll mention that first because I think this is one of the examples when the soundtrack or the musical score really determines, if you like, how great this production is. You know, you get it a lot. You know, we always say that story and character are the most important parts of any kind of movie or animation story, and that's true. But music always plays a key part as well, and I just think you get a better experience viewing this anime if you have that Rory McFarlane soundtrack. So that was just one major feature I wanted to get out the way on here. So another else what's great about this is the animation. You know, we talk about old school anime and mentioned in previous reviews how some are dated and more aged than others, but Cyber City Away, the animation still holds up today. Everything is had kind of this clean and pristine look about it. We have this futuristic setting, as I said before, so you have these really tall skyscrapers, and it's got this kind of really blue, light blue hue about it. The design on there, it's got this sprayed kind of hue amongst the skyscrapers and the tones on there, and you see these kind of streets and motorways, and they're all on different levels, and it's all fantastic. What's also great as well is the car designs. If you look at in particular the car designs of both Sengoku and Benten's in particular, the way the cars are designed and everything, it's got this really kind of cool futuristic kind of look about it. You know, everybody refers to Akira having this great futuristic design that was kind of ahead of its time, right? And I feel the same about Cyber City Away. Just the way that everything is designed, from the tanks to the ships to the cars, it's all got this really, really just cool, smooth look about it. The way the animation flows. Every time we see a car design and the kind of exhaust come from the wheels and the ships flying through the air, and the audio, the way that the ships zoom through, it's got this really kind of composed, stylized feel to it, and it holds up today. Absolutely holds up today. It's made in 1990, but you could say that it came out maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's just, again, when I mentioned before about the Madhouse company, high production values, right? As you've got high production of animation, it doesn't matter whether it's released 5 years, 10 years ago, it still holds up today. So the animation is absolutely fantastic on it, and the standard kind of increases throughout each episode. Even though the first episode, Virtual Death, is still great, by the time we get through Psychic Trooper and Bloodlust, you can really see how the animation evolves throughout. And Madhouse, they have this distinctive style about their characters. Their faces are very vivid, and you see the way their eyes and the kind of mouths and the jaw lines are drawn on here. You know, I think physically everything is drawn well within proportion, but it's got a really kind of distinctive feel to it. It's a much more adult oriented than what you would normally associate anime with. You know, the typical association that everybody has this big, large, round eyes and these round faces and these pointy chins. But Cyber City Away, it's got this really more mature looking feel to the way that characters are drawn, but it's still very distinctive. You know, you still have kind of like the flaky eyebrows and the narrow eyes and the sort of pointy nose and everything, but it's really kind of vividly drawn, and it's just great distinctive style, and that's what you want from anime. Like I said, you get this also with Wicked City and Ninja Scroll as well on this, so the animation is great on it. But what else really makes Cyber City such a great anime is the characters. And in Sengoku, Benten, and Goku, you have three very charismatic, impressionable male leads on here. You know, Sengoku, he's kind of the typical, more roguish, kind of charming protagonist on here. He kind of has a on-off kind of dating relationship with one of the female kind of receptionists on it. It's not really enhance as much their romantic relationship, and I think it's better that way. But he's kind of this lone wolf, this lone gun, you know. He's got this very kind of abrasive, wisecracking mentality about him. There's great back and forth between him and Hasegawa. That's the kind of typical abrasive nature of all these cyber criminals. They give as good as they get on here. We have Gogul, who's much more of a, if you like, even-tempered kind of character. He was an ex-boxer, and he's much more of a physically imposing guy. He looks about 6'6", 6'7". He has this distinctive kind of red spiky hair, and he's got this visor, or I think which was due to an injury he gained from his boxing, even though the series doesn't really adhere much to that. But yeah, he's much more of a technological guy as opposed to Sengoku. We see him in all the episodes. He's helping infiltrate the systems and hacking into the different infrastructure of the technology throughout as they do certain tasks on here. We also have Benten, who is much more of a kind of distant, kind of laconic character. He's very well dressed, all these smart, slinky type suits. He's clearly bisexual, or, you know, they don't hint at it as such, but you can clearly tell by the way he looks. He's got the lipstick on and the white spiky hair, and he's got the nails on here. So I don't think it's as such he's, if you like, gender fluid. He's still very much a male character. We still have him, you know, involved in females and relationships and history on it. But you can tell the way he looks. He's got a very much of a kind of transsexual look about him, and that's fine. You know, that's not a problem. And it's actually more notable that, again, what's special about anime is that you can have characters like that, and it doesn't matter. They never refer really to his look or his sexuality. Yeah, there's a bit of banter again between him and Sengoku. Again, like I said, there's a great chemistry between these characters, and Sengoku will make one or two odd remarks, always winding him up, and Benten, for the most part, will not ignore him, but will bite every now and again. And again, that's what you need. If you're going to have three distinctive leads in your story, you need them to be a kind of real chemistry and provocativeness between all three of them, and that's what's great throughout. All three great lead characters are brilliant throughout this, and they're able to carry each of the three episodes on their own on there. We also have Hasegawa, who I mentioned before, is the main kind of police chief of the Oedo police. He's able to kind of have control over all three of the criminals by, basically, he has this lighter, right, and it's got a detonator device on it. So whenever the three criminals, they get out of control or they go rogue, he always threatens them on there. And each time they go on a mission, he gives them a certain countdown they've got to achieve the mission by. If they don't, then he threatens to detonate them. I don't think he will actually go through with it, because at the end of the day, you need these three criminals out there on the streets, because, like I said before, it's the high risk jobs that nobody wants, so you need them out there taking on these crimes. But it's always good to have that threat level on here. So he's another great character, and again, it's always back and forth between the two on here. So if we look at the individual stories themselves, Virtual Death is basically, we have a situation where we have a high kind of building, and it's taken over by an AI force. We have people trapped in the elevator, and Sengoku's got to go in there and eliminate the artificial intelligence that's taken over this building. And again, Benten and Gogul rather will help him out on there, and it's more of a Sengoku centered storyline, but the others help him out on there. We have Psychic Trooper, where we basically have a government or a military that wants to basically take over controlling the lawlessness within Oedo, and they have this cyborg called Molkos, and they've used basically dead bodies of other criminals to get the psychic energy and the force from them into building this cyborg. And it's how the Oedo police deal with that, and this more involves Gogul, because he's the main kind of test subject for Molkos, and Gogul also has to help his friend called Sarah, who has hacked into some top secret information, and the armed forces have found out and they're tracking her down, so he's got to help her out on there. And then we move on to the third installment, which is Bloodlust, which is basically we have a series of cases where people have been abducted by vampires, and Benton's got to investigate that case. And he comes across a certain woman who has this really kind of big backstory about how she came under infected of this virus, and we see that other people are getting involved in this virus, and Benton has to draw a connection between the virus and the people that are getting attacked by vampires on here, right? So that's basically a summary of all three of the major episodes without going into too many spoilerific details. Now, if I had to pick which is the best one, it's difficult because they're all three are great, but I'd probably go for Psychic Trooper, because I think that's the one where you have typically the best action and probably the best kind of layered storyline on here. You know, the animation's fantastic. It's fantastic in all three of them, but I think what's great about it particularly is when we have Gogul in the main climax towards the end. Again, I'm not going to spoil too much, but the climax towards the end and the way the action and the rock music is just pumping throughout. It's brilliant Psycho Trooper, but they're all great. Bloodlust as well, where we really have this more kind of pop synthesized disco beat, you know, this bass driven beat to the soundtrack as we see Benton walking through the streets and investigating, you know, the various cases going on there. It's all fantastic as well, and the antagonists that each of them take on are all great. You know, it takes a good time to establish their motivations and why they're doing what they're doing on here, and what's the main core of them trying to, you know, kill people or antagonize people throughout. It's all great throughout. There's brilliant action throughout, but what's great about it is it's a very measured storytelling pace. So it's not just action every 2 minutes. These are very much detectives investigating, and I love the way that the whole overall story folds. And you know, we investigate in each cases and we find out different villains and different characters, and goes on throughout on this. So it's just I'm telling you right now, it really is one of the best animes out there. I just can't emphasize enough how brilliant that Cyber City Oedo is on here. You know, another great feature is the dialogue, and again, which dub that you get, but if you go the manga UK dub with the Rory McFarlane soundtrack, you know, it's very much of a foul-mouthed, abrasive dialogue on this. Some of the terminology and some of the phrases they use, it's hilarious throughout. You know, if you go to the Virtual Death, the first one on here, and you see straight away Sengoku and the foul-mouthed language he uses, particularly to the main droid that talks to them and aids them by downloading data and getting information from them. And some of the phrases that Sengoku and Benten uses for how and other the characters, it's just fantastic. It's laugh out loud. It really is. It's that typical kind of gratuitous language that really, I think, even by anime standards, you know, it's quite a volatile kind of use of language, but I think it's great, and I think it's just keeping in tone with the story and the direction throughout on there. So that was all fantastic on there. So I can't really find necessarily a flaw in this at all. You know, I just think the only unfortunate aspect is that we only got 3 episodes. Because it's high production value, I understand that the budget would have been a bit more higher, and maybe they were only able to produce 3 episodes. This isn't based, I don't think, on any particular manga or any just kind of outstanding film, if you like. So this was really a kind of original concept that was drawn together, and it's just unfortunate that we only got 3 episodes that they haven't really come back and revisited again. You know, we've seen with the likes of Devilman, and we've seen Ninja Scroll, we've seen an Appleseed, we've had the original animes, and then we've had future adaptations come throughout, right? But we've never touched on Cyber City Oedo again. That's kind of just been left in the wind, and I don't know why, because it really is the top draw, you know, level of anime on there. I would love to see an updated version in the same animation style. I wouldn't want them to necessarily go the route like we did with Appleseed, where we had that kind of CG cel-shaded animation style. I wouldn't want them to do that. I'd want them to kind of keep to the same kind of Madhouse typical style. But I would just like to see an, you know, upgrade in terms of like the overall sheen of the animation and just more episodes. I'd love to see that, you know. But I guess it hasn't been maybe revered throughout the years. You know, if you're a non-anime fan, like I said, the more, if you like, the Ninja Scroll, Akira, and Appleseed, and Ghost in the Shell, those are the ones that have kind of been revered. And Cyber City Away the Way has kind of been left in the background, which I think is unfortunate, because for me, Cyber City Away the Way is every bit as good as those, on the same level, or maybe even greater than all of those on there. I just really can't find any particular flaws, you know, within this. All the characterization is great. Like I said, you've got great leads in the role on here, great effects, great animation. And as I mentioned at the start of this review, you must make sure that you get the Manga UK Entertainment dub with the Rory McFarlane soundtrack and score. You must do that. Now, I'm not saying the original Japanese dub isn't good, and I know a lot of times when people listen and watch anime, they always prefer the original Japanese dubbed version as opposed to the English version. And it is subjective, you know, everyone's got their own opinion, but for me, make sure that you get this Rory McFarlane soundtrack version of Cyber City Away the Way. Trust me, it just enhances the whole experience of viewing this anime. I'm telling you that right now. So I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the score and the soundtrack, but it does make a difference when you watch it for the first time. Okay, so if I had to give Cyber City Away the Way a score rating, maybe high estimate here, but I'm going to give it a 9.6 out of 10. I really think it is that great. It truly is. I just cannot really pick any particular flaw with this anime on here. And you have 3 installments, so I know back in the day when they were released on VHS, you would get it where 3 installments would be on one cassette. And I like to do it myself. I like to watch just 3 installments back to back: Virtual Death, Psychic Trooper, and then Bloodlust at the last, you know. But you can watch them individually. It doesn't make it any worse for you. It's a bit like, you know, Lord of the Rings. You know, once you watch one episode, you want to watch the others on there as well. So I like to watch all 3 back to back. So it's basically what, over 2.5 hours. But it doesn't matter. You know, you'll enjoy all 3 of them on here. It's just highly entertaining. Great action, great effects, great spectacular animation throughout there. Visual aesthetics is fantastic on here. You know, I always comment certain animes I'd love to see a live action adaptation. I would think a live action adaptation of Cyber City Away the Way would be brilliant. It would be absolutely brilliant on here to see. You know, you'd need quite a high budget though to pull it off, and again, because unfortunately it's not as well renowned or revered as your Ghost in the Shell. So I don't think we're going to get it, and unfortunately I don't think we're going to get any content in the future based on Cyber City Away the Way. But who knows? Like I said, I think as movies eventually, when we come back over this virus and movies come back again to the forefront, and once we've kind of exhausted all the kind of 80s properties, and maybe if we hit a plateau with the comic book superhero movies, we might get a shift more to see more manga and anime adaptations. We already had Battle Angel Elite, as I said, which I think was very successful. Despite the high budget, was very successful critically amongst fans. So hopefully we'll see more anime get picked up in the future. And hopefully Cyber City Away the Way will be one of those. If not, then hopefully we can get more animated tales. Maybe Netflix eventually might recognise it amongst other animes and pick it up, and we can get more further adventures. I'd want to see it with Sengoku, Benten, and Gogul though. You know, I know a lot of the time when these animes get revisited, people like to bring in their own characters and inject their new storylines. But if we did get a kind of reimagining of this, I'd want to see those 3 characters prominent again, having further adventures on here, and the same kind of tone and the same kind of adult orientated script and dialogue. And hopefully they could bring back Rory McFarlane wherever he is now, and have him come back and do the soundtrack. For me, that's a core essential on there. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Cyber City Away the Way. Just, I'm telling you right now, one of the quintessential animes. I'm telling you, you will watch it and you will absolutely love it. Whether you're into anime a lot from the old school, or you're not, you're more new school, it doesn't matter. Whether you're not into anime at all and you're just coming across things to watch, and you're just starting to watch anime, and this is the one I would highly recommend. Trust me, you will love Cyber City Away the Way. So that's my thoughts on this below. One of the true greats animes ever. Let me know what you think in the comments below when you come in to watch this. Did you find this as exceptional as what I deemed it to be, or were you not as that impressed by it? Were you finding that other animes did it better, this kind of futuristic cyberpunk era, other animes did it better than this, or did you love it like I did on here? And would you like to see a reimagining, or just a rebooting of this kind of franchise and bring it back to the forefront? Would you like to see it back in 2D animation, or would you prefer it to be in a much more of a cel-shaded style and aesthetic like we got with Appleseed on here? But let me know what you think in the comments below, and make sure you stay healthy and keep safe distances. I'll keep continuing to bring you more of these series and anime reviews as I come along. I've got a couple of classic titles just like this in mind soon, but trust me, Cyber City Away the Way, make sure it's one of your top priority either to watch or either to collect in terms of anime, because you'll love it on there. But that's my thoughts for now. Keep safe distances, keep washing your hands, take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.